In a spiritual journey or a spiritual practice, there is always a risk of spiritual illusion and spiritual misinformation. We often tend to we often tend to think spirituality and being enlightened in a way because our mind operates in that way. Our mind can create illusion. It can create illusion in such a way, in such a pattern that could easily convince itself. See, here is the irony. Our mind will create a illusion, and by that illusion, our own mind will be convinced that is the fact. By that very nature, the illusion becomes complex and it's become more compelling to accept as a reality. That is the problem of enlightenment. Today, see, most of the people are interested in spirituality. Even though who doesn't believe in God or who believe in God, the theists and atheists, both of them are interested in spirituality, spiritual enlightenment. They want to have a blissful life. They want to rejoice their life in their highest possibility. So the very person who have achieved a materialistic success can think or can imagine that this material belonging, this physical belonging is no close to giving them success or giving them joy or bliss what they expect in their life. So they try to incline in a different perspective, or they want to search a new way other than materialistic earning, and which ultimately will lead them to a higher self or to a higher journey or spiritual journey. And there are lots of true masters and so-called masters, but the problem of these masters are the true masters are very rare, and they are they doesn't sign, and they doesn't advertise themselves and saying, I'll see, I am a true master, come to me, I will give you enlightenment. But all these so-called signing peoples who ultimately has no value, or who ultimately have no experience, no insight in spiritual growth, they tend to be the master. They tend to be the crowd appeaser. They appeasement. They do the appeasement of the crowd in such a manner that the crowd tend to believe that that guy, that master, really should have some spiritual enlightenment or some spiritual consciousness or higher consciousness than the disciples and then the listeners. So they tend to follow that master. But the nexus irony of this matter is, even the master tried to teach the spiritual enlightenment or higher consciousness, he himself hadn't experienced that. By that very phenomena, the follower who is following the master in such a pattern, in such a way, they want to sacrifice everything for the sake of bliss, and the master, so-called master, is misusing the trust of the follower and using them in their own benefit. See the irony, the master who is teaching higher consciousness beyond the material belonging to the person who get tired of all this material belonging and who is brought nothing to their life, that same master is getting all this material belonging from that follower by teaching how the material belonging is meaningless, or it has no value in the bliss system of human evolution. That's the irony. And most people do not understand that. Most people do not want to understand that. Or most people do not reconcile that as an argument, as a fact. By that way, now the spiritual business is becoming booming in such a fashion that it is becoming a many hundreds of $billion business every year. And people are grabbing that market in one way or in one name or other. And the trend is like many Western people come to like Eastern country, they learn very few, and they do not, most of them even do not meet a real master. They met some fake guy who is like doing all this stuff for a livelihood, for running their life. They met them, and that guy who is doing all this stuff for the life teach some mundane stuff. But the fact is that the Western guy is has so embraced the materialistic outline of the life, he get impressed with such a mundane stuff, spiritual stuff, and start to like follow that guy. And after some month, he start to learn some stuff, and that guy who is also getting money from the Western guy will teach him whatever he have heard from the real master or from any book. In Western philosophy, if you read any book, you can have some spiritual knowledge on that. That's the very interesting thing about that. Or in Western philosophy or in Western civilization, if you read any book, you can know the materialistic belonging or how can you be more rich. That's the center point of every philosophy, every guidance, every theory of the book. So after some month, the Western guy went to go back to their the country, and they start to teach. And the people in Western country who follow that Western person or Western guy who came from Eastern country after learning some very small mundane thing, they try to be the master. They try to preach the higher consciousness stuff, which even they also had learned, they had an experience. See, in spirituality, the knowledge matters zero. How much you have acquired the knowledge, it is like unlearning stuff. Spirituality is of unlearning thing. It's not about learning, it's about experiencing, it's about living your life. So if you have learned all this stuff and had an experience, a single fragment of a single glow of bliss, then it's meaningless. So all these people who are teaching spiritual practice, this and that, soul, reincarnation, all this stuff, they tend to fail. They tend to fade down. So the illusion of enlightenment in spirituality is so vivid, is so rampant, that the true enlightened masters are hidden nowadays. That's the problem of today's humanity. And if a spiritual seeker doesn't reconcile this fact, doesn't embrace this fact and search of higher consciousness, if they do not go deeper to the fact, then these hollow masses or these hollow promises of spiritual enlightenment will not be ended in very soon time. So we need to be aware of this fact. We need to know how people are using your insecurity or your pain to achieve something material in their own life. If we understand then loss of all this misbehavior related to spirituality will end in their one way.